You know, I had a weird obsession with Maximilian Robespierre because when I was in high school, we learned about the French Revolution like in my sophomore year, like almost like yeah, like 10 years ago. And I remember like I really was fascinated by this revolution. I like even outside of class time, I would like go on YouTube and watch like movies and documentaries about the French Revolution. I would read excerpts and I had a weird obsession with this era, but it's specifically with like Max Robespierre because like I don't know, I just found him to be the most fascinating character of this whole situation. You know, someone of like a one of the original like, revolutionaries who just took a 180 and just became a dictator and started like killing everyone very ruthlessly, you know? It's he really is just a fascinating character to me. So it's kind of funny that now like I'm watching this video about the guy and definitely like someone I like I said had a weird fascination with and that it's interesting to finally be back learning about him because today we're looking at a video from Jack Rackham, or his full channel name is History Abridged with Jack Rackham. And we're looking at the video called The Pacifist Who Killed 20,000 People, The Life and Times of Robespierre. And, just everything about the guy, like I said, his rise, his descent into villainy, and then his death. Like, I think it's funny because he was kind of, like, infamous for, giving a lot of great speeches and stuff. And he ended up getting shot in the jaw, which kind of rendered him mute. So, and he ended up being killed by his own weapon, the guillotine. Like, his end is so poetic in a weird way, you get me? Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It is wild, the entire event. And, yeah, I probably should stop, like, yapping and get to the actual video. So if you want to watch the original video from Jack Rackham, sorry, my throat is still recovering. So if you want to watch the original video, the link is down in the description down below. It is the first link that you will see. And if you want to help support my channel in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help my very small but humble channel grow, and I'd appreciate it very much. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, let us get to it, shall we? Let us watch The Pacifist Who Killed 20,000 People, the life and times of Robespierre. Robespierre.
But when one can be sacrificed for the many, why not 2, or 3, or 10? Little by little, we will find reasons for sacrificing the many for the happiness of the many, and we will think it was a bargain. I say, I hope this is the last of such unpleasant business. I thought it was all rather good. He had some good ideas there at the end. Max, that was a warning, not a suggestion. Max? Sorry, I thought I heard a negative Nancy. It's funny, no matter how many times we take care of her, Negative Nancy is always trying to impede the revolution. You don't want to be a Negative Nancy, do you? This video is sponsored by Keeps, because when they went looking for young men about to go bald, they found history.
Oh my gosh.
You've got hair. You like your hair. 1780. The future of France is up in the air. The royal coffers ran dry, paying for feasts at Versailles, while the people of France faced food shortages and price hikes that only seemed to get worse every year. Oh, but don't worry, Louis borrowed 1,000,000,000 livres in debt so that some British colonists halfway around the world could have their...
Yeah, that's the funniest thing about the American Revolution, is like how the French basically helped, the US out in a lot of ways, and that the French really did it with basically no gain in terms of finances. They just did it to despite the the British, and then yeah, America, yeah, basically it already made their situation worse. So It's kind of funny how that worked.
Freedom. At the same time, a young Maximilien Robespierre has just graduated from law school. He's a brilliant and principled gentleman, an eloquent social activist trying to make a change in the world. He attacked the discrimination faced by so-called illegitimate children, he attacked the sidelining of women in academic life, and above all, he attacked the monarchy. The fact that the king could sign a letter and send you to jail without a trial, and certainly without collecting $200. The fact that the king could charge your son with a crime and then punish you for it. Hell, Robespierre even gave up his position as a judge out of opposition to the death penalty. Yep, Robespierre opposed the death penalty.
That is the funniest thing ever. Because, as we know, later on he doesn't seem to mind the death penalty. So wow, I'm telling you, his development is one of the most interesting ones. Because, like, there's a narrative in the French Revolution, you know, like at the beginning, it's like this very, you know, kind of like inspirational event. Kind of like the American Revolution in some senses, you know? And you might agree with what they're going for, you know? Yeah, more equality, more rights, you know? Get rid of a bad monarchy. And like, I feel like the beginning of the revolution, it's easy to get behind the ideals, especially considering it's like hot off the American Revolution. So it's like, oh, cool, we're gonna do that again. You know, America was a success. The French are gonna do it. And then the sudden shift from this inspirational thing into this bloodbath of violence and like carnage and death is one of the most jarring things, to where it's like, oh, like, you guys took it way too far. And I feel like Robespierre at the beginning, like, he was, you know, a guy involved in this, and like, you know, his earlier ideals are really easy to get behind like that, you know? And, you know, kind of like heroic in a sense. And then he takes a violent turn out of nowhere, and a part of me is like, was he always like this power hungry and like, you know, tyrannical? Or did he get corrupted? That's kind of like the thing I was most interested in, because I'm like, at first he seemed like, okay, he's chill, and then just out of nowhere, the 180 where he just sees his power and then starts killing people. You know, it's like, dang, was he always like that, or did he like have a dramatic change, and if so, what caused that change? That was like the big question I had when I was looking into this, like back in high school. I was like, yeah, or was this always him, or did like he get corrupted? But then again, there's that saying I think of, if you want to see how a person really is, you give them power, or something like that. You'll see the real person once you give them power. Like I said, I'm not sure, but you know, it is just, it's funny, you know what I mean, in that his development.
Penalty. Okay. Eventually, he makes a name for himself in local politics and becomes a deputy in the Estates General, France's big special committee that hasn't met in 150 years and is expected to solve all of its tax problems because the king can't figure it out on his own. The problem was, France was a modern society with a feudal government. The estate representing 95% of the population got 1/3 of the votes, and so, this is dumb. You're dumb, we're making our own council where we all get counted equally and we're the ones making the laws. And bam, just like that, they all got together in an old tennis court at Versailles and decided, guess what?
Yeah, the famous tennis court oath. That's a big development of defying the king and really starting the whole thing.
France has a constitution now, or at least it's going to. It takes a while to write that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Robespierre is basically just some kid from another province watching history go down, but it doesn't take long before he gets some recognition because he's not a philosopher in an ivory tower. He's a protester marching on the ground with the women of Paris to hold the king accountable to the people. He's also a part of the Jacobin Club. For the purposes of this video, you can think of them like a political party. And like, he's new, but Max is killing it. In America, Hamilton defended the Constitution with 51 essays. In France, Robespierre's speeches defending the revolution numbered 328, all while working on that Constitution and arguing that citizens shouldn't need to own property to vote, and that citizens shouldn't be property. Crazy stuff in 1791. That go-getter.
Yeah, Robespierre. Again, a big trait about him is that he was great at oratory. He was quite the speech giver, and you know, he had that power with his voice, and you know, he used it to really elevate himself. And I think it goes to show you, like, man, if you can give a good speech, you'd be surprised how far you can make it in life. Like oratory skills are very powerful, and I think he had that gift, you know. And I could be wrong about this, it's been many years, but I think he was a big follower of the Enlightenment, like Voltaire, is that his name? I think he definitely had an idea about virtue and like a hard-on for it, and a lot of Enlightenment ideals, which, you know, you can agree with a lot of his earlier stuff, like, you know, let's give women more rights, let's not treat people like property, and, you know, there's a lot that even, like, you're looking at the beginning of this, and I'm like, yeah, I agree, like, you know, I agree with a lot of things, but then he kind of goes overboard with, like, later on, as we see, then, like, you know, just trying to get rid of religion, and then he tried to create his own weird religion about virtue and crap, and then it's just like, oh, like I said, it's like, up to a point, you kind of look at the revolution and its ideals like, okay, this is good, and then there's that shift I keep talking about, where everything just changes, and it's like no longer like good, and it just becomes a completely different monster. And yeah, the Jacobins were kind of the extremist of it, like, you know, the radicals, rather, that every freaking revolution has. There's a trend with literally every revolution, you know, and that trend is, or there are like certain components that need to be in every revolution, and one of them is that the radicals are always going to be around. There's always going to be a group that just wants to push it even further than probably you know, should be pushed, and they don't know when to stop. And usually, I've noticed in revolutions, the radicals are always the ones to seize the most power before they mess everything up, because it kind of makes sense. They're the radicals, they're the ones who are pushing it and the more aggressive, and usually they gain power and then proceed to mess things up and push it too far, and it's kind of what the Jacobins did. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Attitude gets Robespierre elected as the Secretary of the National Assembly, which is the thing that replaced the Estates General, except now it's called the National Constituent Assembly, but soon it's going to be the Legislative Assembly. Don't worry about the difference, shit's wild in France. The thing that's important is that in the middle of all these debates over how to form militias, the right to bear arms, the death penalty, Robespierre brings up a simple little motion that says, once they're done rebranding, no one from the Constituent Assembly is allowed to be on the Legislative Assembly, and he gets it passed. This seems wild because Robespierre is on the Assembly, and so is everybody else that voted on it, but so were all the moderates, the ones dragging their feet on the revolution, the people who thought, okay, good job everybody, we're gonna be a constitutional monarchy just like England, and it'll be smooth sailing from here. Frankly, their views weren't all too popular anymore, it's just that they were the biggest names in politics. But if they're banned from running, I guess someone more revolutionary will have to fill their shoes, won't they? Downside, the Legislative Assembly ends up being a complete failure with 23 presidents in 11 months. Upside, no more royal apologists in the Assembly, because it turns out the King of France is attempting to use a foreign army to crush the French people into submission. Monarchy is a bad look right now, and even the moderate royalists like Lafayette apparently can't be trusted not to massacre the French people. Downside, Robespierre doesn't want to go to war with Austria, but tough luck, he's not on the Assembly anymore, and Brissot, the new guy in charge, he does want war. The war goes to hell in a handbasket. The French army is not only undertrained, France is teetering on civil war. Most of the commanding officers are noblemen, so either they fled the country, or no one under their command trusts them, much less trusts them with their lives. That's why within 10 days of declaring war, the French went to battle, saw the enemy, immediately ran away, and killed their own general on the way out because he might have been part of a conspiracy. You never know.
Gosh.
Everything comes to a head in 1792. Robespierre has just foiled another attempt.
Yeah, I think this perfectly captures just the pure chaos that was the revolution. Because if there's one way I could describe it, it's very unstable. You know, even when at its earlier points, like, just like, I don't know how else to describe it. This revolution was incredibly unstable. And, you know, they didn't know when to temper themselves in a lot of areas.
By Louis to flee the country, and to be honest, everyone's kind of done with the king trying to sell them out to their traditional sworn enemies. Well, one day, the king's head of security is assassinated, and wouldn't you know it, the next morning there's an assault on the palace being led by Robespierre's friends, Danton and Desmoulins.
This might be it. Our last stand. Is there nothing we can do to win? Dear, when the enemy is at the gates, even when their voices roar like thunder, even when they number more than the hairs on your head, you must remember, there is always something you can do. Book it! Go, go, go!
In an act of humility, Louis runs to the Legislative Assembly for protection, only to find...
What are you doing? Get down! What are you doing? I thought I was the one under attack. Well, you know how we decided not to prosecute Lafayette for his little whoopsie on the Champ de Mars? Yeah, turns out we're not revolutionary enough for the revolution.
The king and his strange bedfellows in the assembly watched on to see what would happen to the Swiss guard defending the palace, and oh boy, it was not pretty. Eventually, the insurrectionists turned their attention to the assembly, and the assembly went,
We got him! Louis, you've been a bad boy, and you are officially dethroned.
yeah. Just like that, France is a full-on republic, and the new face of the government is the Paris Commune, a hitherto unmentioned office led by Danton and Desmoulins. Desmoulins is patting himself on the back thinking, okay, good job everybody, we're a republic now, and it'll be smooth sailing from here. But that is moderate talk. The question remained, what to do with Louis?
Yep, not revolutionary enough, I'm afraid. And that's basically the running trend. You're not revolutionary enough, so, you know, yeah, some things you need to ease into, but they're like trying to speed run everything. Yeah, killing Louis is definitely, and basically the royal family, like, they killed Louis and, you know, Marie Antoinette. So that definitely was, yeah, just insane.
So, who managed to make it out of the insurrection with some sort of a political career intact, argued that if Louis died, there goes all of France's leverage against Austria. And then, an orgy of evidence came pouring out of Louis's closet, revealing that a bunch of moderate revolutionaries were in Louis's pocket trying to keep him in power the entire time. So Robespierre has seriously got to grapple with his whole no death penalty thing. And at the end of the day, he argues thus. To leave Louis alive in prison would be to invite to his troubled nation war and treason, and to exile him would be more dangerous still. With regret, Robespierre declares a fatal truth. Louis must die so that the nation may live. Order! Order! Alright, how many votes?
And that's a pretty big, I think, character development. You know, right there, it's that compromising or getting rid of something that you previously stood against. You know, like he stood against the death penalty, and to kind of give in to that, regardless if you agree with his reasoning or not, that's a pretty big thing. Like when you kind of drop something or are willing to just compromise about, like, an issue that you've spent, like, you know, a lot of your life kind of standing against. And I think that's a pretty big step into what's gonna happen later. That reasoning of, well, he needs to die for, you know, France to live. And then you could think he could apply that logic to literally a lot of other people. They need to all die so France can live, and then it kind of spirals. So there definitely is something telling when someone is willing to kind of change on a huge topic such as that. And I think for in this specific instance, it's not a it's telling of what's going to happen later, you know, with hindsight's knowledge and whatnot.
Votes for guilty. Yep. All in favor of immediate execution? 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. By a count of 3.
Yeah, I think this vote actually, they voted to kill Louis. I think the winning side only won by 1 extra vote. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like that's about right. They barely won. Like a literal 1 vote or 2 is what caused them to, you know, it was a real close one actually, funnily enough.
160 to 360, it seems we have a tie. Sorry, King's cousin here, how you doing? I say we kill him, no questions asked. Well, the king's dead, so I guess we don't have to.
Oh wow, I did not know that it was the king's cousin. Oh dude, that sucks. Cousin, bro. Wow.
To worry about people conspiring to put him in power. Should be smooth sailing from here. It wasn't. This may come as a shock, but in the process of restructuring France's entire government from the ground up, a lot of people had different ideas about how things should be run, and some people were more revolutionary than others. Now, the moderates were the Girondins, a faction within the Jacobins who basically wanted the same things as everybody else, but were 20% less extreme about how to get it. But after everything so-called moderates did to betray the revolution before, Robespierre sees only 2 parties, the people and the enemies of the people. Robespierre begins to call for their arrest, and it turns out—
And that is a beyond dangerous mindset to take, where you just see everything in such a black and white manner. Because as we know, in real life, things are very seldomly black and white. So, yeah, not a great, yeah.
out that when you threaten your political rivals with arrest and execution, they don't respond kindly. The president of the National the National Convention, he tells Robespierre, you might have all of Paris wrapped around your finger, but the rest of France is tired. And if you continue to threaten the government, there's more than enough men in France to rise up against Paris. And Robespierre goes, you may be right, but it would be a shame if the people of Paris got to you first. This time, the government is hiding in the palace, and so the palace is stormed once more. The Girondins are captured and taken as hostages, if not killed on the spot. Brissot, once charged with leading France, is charged now with treason and taken to the guillotine. Opposition to Robespierre and his faction is no more. With France under siege by enemies foreign and domestic, Paris must be of one mind. The reign of terror had begun. But Brissot was right about the rest of the—
Yeah, the reign of terror, which, again, is just— It's... This revolution was such a crap show, dude. Just a complete crap show. I don't know what else to call it.
Country not being so keen on Robespierre and, terrorism. Frenchmen across the country rise up in revolt, and Robespierre asks himself, have I become the enemy of the people? No. The people are the enemy of the people! Come October, the Constitution is suspended, and—
Yeah. Again, just kind of delusional, right? He just sees himself as this champion, even when he is so clearly become the villain. His villain arc is kind of insane. It really is.
The new supreme government is Robespierre's deliciously ironic Committee of Public Safety. The French army is sent to suppress the counter-revolutions, while in Paris, Robespierre purges the city. The king's cousin is charged with the crimes of his son, guillotined. The philosopher Condorcet was a traitor who criticized the constitution, even though the government suspended it anyway, guillotined.
Oh my gosh.
Danton, who stirred the people of Paris to storm the king's palace and slaughter the royalists in prison, too soft, a counter-revolutionary, guillotined.
Oh my gosh, just how far do we need to take it? Literally, this man would have murdered everyone in Paris and in France if he could have.
Desmoulins. Desmoulins is a child, a spoiled brat whom others have led astray, but he needn't die. He'll burn his journals and show the people our answer to his outrageous criticisms. Won't you, Desmoulins? Burning my criticisms is not answering them. What'll it be, Max? You were my friend, Desmoulins, but I must always choose the people. Which people?
gosh.
You'll guillotine every last man in France until there's no one standing but you and a very nervous executioner. Should I be worried? Only if—
Yeah, like, that's a really awesome line, though. It's true, though. It's like, how far do we go before it's enough? Like, it's never enough with him. It'll never be enough, you know? Everywhere you see, and that's kind of like paranoia, right? Just everywhere you look, you see enemies, you know? And just become even more tyrannical than the king could have been. So yeah, insane.
you're guilty, anyone who's worried is guilty! Robespierre decapitated so many people he had to upgrade the courtroom so he could sentence 60 people at the same time.
Oh my
Even
gosh.
former presidents of the Republic were getting axed. No one was revolutionary enough for Robespierre. And in the middle of it all, he ended slavery. Wild how one really good thing ended up in the middle there. Seems like the writers did a lazy job of trying to make him redeemable, but it never really went anywhere. And then he started a cult.
Yeah. One little nice thing. Okay, that's cool. But everything else just, no, not cool.
And parading around like a Roman emperor, and I don't even have time to get into all of that nonsense because my first draft of this episode was like half an hour long, but like, look at this.
Yeah, I remember. The celebration of the Supreme Being is what he called it. Yeah, the celebration, or rather the festival of the Supreme Being, this god that Robespierre basically pulls out of his butt. And like this festival, it's him on this like giant mountain thing, giving speeches about the beauty of virtue and crap, and just, yeah, I think you can see where his mind was at the end there, and what he really cared about.
France finally gets a big win over the Austrians, and for the first time, Paris isn't under threat of an imminent invasion, so the rest of the government asks Robespierre if maybe it's time to dial back the military crackdowns. And Robespierre tells them, "What did I tell you about being worried?" And yeah, saying
my
you were
gosh.
worried was a literal crime now, because you were seeking to inspire discouragement, and all your neighbors, if they heard you, were legally obligated to turn you in. And you might think, wow, that's insane. How did they process so many cases? And I'll tell you how. They got rid of witnesses, they got rid of lawyers, they stuck 60 people in a courtroom, and if you were polite, you might be allowed to give your own defense for like 15 minutes, and then they either let you go free, or they decided you were a negative Nancy, and they f***ing murdered you. Robespierre's tribunal system abolished literally every penalty other—
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you literally it feels like 9 times out of 10 you're definitely just dying. If you're there already, chances are you're dying.
than the death penalty. So the government is like, oh god, this guy's insane. And Robespierre crashes in through the door shouting, "Insane, am I? Is that what you've been thinking? You know what this sounds like? London propaganda. There's conspiracists all throughout the government, and I know who you are, and I'm coming to get you." And like, maybe he only had a couple people in mind, but he wouldn't show them a complete list of names.
Yeah, that's actually what makes his downfall. He's like, I have a new list, new names, new enemies, and I think they just asked, okay, show us the list, and I don't think he had it, all really mapped out, so he refused, and then everyone, fearing that they were on the list, basically just turned on him. It is like, yeah, his fall was fascinating also in that respect.
And everyone in that room is thinking the same thing about him, so he's just threatened to execute the entire government. So when Robespierre comes back the next day, everybody attacks him and says, "Traitor! You didn't run your speech through the committees before coming here. That's against the rules. You must be conspiring against the government." And Robespierre wants to be like, "Have you lost your mind?" But you're not allowed to talk in your defense if you're disrespectful. The only guys who step up to help him are his brother Augustin and a man named Lebas, who come up and say, "Oh yeah? If you want to kill Max, you'll have to kill us too. All in favor?"
Aye!
So they're all sent to prison, but they break out, but the army hunts them down and is busting down the doors. Lebas kills himself with a pistol and hands it to Robespierre. Augustin just jumps out the window and impales himself on a bunch of bayonets like a maniac, and Robespierre tried to kill himself maybe, but they stopped him, so he shot himself in the jaw instead. He's sent to await execution in the same bed as Danton, just for poetic justice.
Honestly, there's so much poetic justice in his downfall. Shooting himself in the jaw so he can't speak, like use his voice, which was his greatest weapon, laying in Danton's bed, being guillotined. Like, it is one of the most... You can't write drama like this. Like, when God was writing this event, he was cooking. Yeah, because that's... I choose now to believe that history is just God, like, writing the greatest fan fiction ever, you know? Because some of the stuff that happens is insane, as we've covered in history.
But he didn't have to wait long because the Committee of Public Safety was very efficient. Max shuts his eyes tight as he's brought to the scaffold and sealed inside his own instrument of death. It's possible he had some last words planned, but to clear his neck, the executioner had to remove the bandage holding his jaw together, and he screamed. An agonizing, blood-curdling scream louder than a tiger. France's most eloquent locutor screamed and screamed and screamed until his lungs went empty forevermore.
Yep, and all's well that ends well. I'm telling you, man, the dude's fascinating. One of those dictators in history that I just can't help but be like, dang, dude, what a journey. The whole revolution was through the Napoleonic Wars, was one of those moments in history. It's just like, it's so not boring. It is some of the most unhinged, insane things happened in France in this era, man. It was amazing to learn about, not when it actually happened, because a lot of people actually died. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna end the video right here, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow when we do something else. Bye, everyone.